Welcome to Let's Talk Learning Disabilities with Laurie Peterson. Laurie spends her days talking about dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and ADHD. She talks to students and adults who have had a lifetime of academic challenges. She's here to share their stories along with other insights with you. So let's talk learning disabilities.
Hey everybody, this is Laurie and welcome back to Let's Talk Learning Disabilities. If you were here back on episode, I believe it's 116, we talked with Cindy Palmer from Threshold Coaches, and she was giving us 10 really helpful tips on getting your kiddo from high school to college, just your tips for students with ADHD. Well, guess what? After we finished recording that day, we kind of kept talking and realized that she has a whole nother little presentation about tips for parents. And as a parent of children with ADHD, these tips are equally as important as the tips for the students. So Cindy is back today. Thanks, Cindy.
Hey. Hi, everybody. Good to be back. Yeah.
And we're going to just run through some really quick but very important tips for parents of students who are neurodivergent or have ADHD. So, Cindy, first of all, kind of give me a little background on like what spawned this for you, because I know this is like a whole presentation for you, but where did this come from?
Yeah, I think where it's come from is watching some of our parents of our speech neurodivergent college clients really struggle with either one end or the other end of a seesaw, and that is completely letting go and assuming that we as coaches have every single thing under control, which we meet with our students usually once a week for an hour, or the other end of the spectrum. And I kid you not, we had a parent text their child 27 times in a weekend because they weren't answering. So that's real extreme. But anywhere close, anywhere at all, remotely leaning that direction, right, is too much. So where and how do we land in the middle? Because neurodivergent support in college is it's multifaceted. It will not happen with just a coach, and likely not going to get much from the school itself. So really, it's a real tricky zone where parents are trying to give their kids autonomy, but not knowing exactly how much to give and when and how. And I will say that it's really unique for each child. So just to really preface this, parent advice is holy ground. And like some of this will match and some of it you'll be like, that's the worst thing ever. That does not apply to me. And I would nod my head and say, yes, you're right. So I do this very delicately and very broad swath quote advice, if you will. So, yes.
Perfect. Well, yeah, because no two neurodivergent or ADHD kids are alike.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
All right. So let's get rolling. Give me your first tip for parents.
First tip is this. It's a classic teacher cliche. Every teacher learned this at some point in their teacher training, and it's the flow of I do, we do, you do. And it's a scaffolding format, right? And, last time we talked about the top 10 tips for students and their parents, because really that's a mixed bag, getting ready. And so one of those things was doctors and getting I get really stuck here of whether or not to call your child, an emerging adult, which is a mouthful, your student, but I'll interchange all of those. But in getting your student ready to head off and make their own doctor's appointments, deal with insurance. So how can you do an I do, we do, you do with that? And this has got to start like junior, senior, beginning of senior year, not right before they go. So if you're behind, it's okay, but get on top of this kind of thing, right? Where you either have them watch you model the phone call, and then you're likely going to have multiples of this. And then you do it together, which could be anything from you work together to write maybe a little tiny script. Or if your child is somebody who's like willing and down to role play, you wouldn't call it role play because they're like, that's so cheesy. But like, what are you going to say when they pick up? What are your top 2-3 questions, right? Just kind of interview them through what they're going to do. That's a we do format. And then you do, that's when that's off to college. You do, it's time for you to do. But if you don't have I do and we do ahead of it, they don't know how. And there's some shame they gather around that because they assume that they should. Well, why should they? So anyhow,
Why is calling and scheduling a doctor's appointment? It is completely overwhelming, and I don't know why that is, but it's not. That's a very common issue, right? Like that,
Yep.
and picking up the phone and making that phone call.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, what about that scares kids so much?
Yeah. Well,
Some adults
I think
too.
they don't talk on the phone hardly
Well,
ever, right?
okay,
So
there
there's a
you go.
generational difference. And then I had a student literally ask me, so when I'm calling to make an appointment with a doctor, do I just call and talk straight to the doctor? And I was like, oh no, sweetie. Like, you're probably going to have like 2 or 3 transfers before you get to a secretary, and then you'll speak with them. But she didn't know.
That's
She
interesting.
had enough self confidence to not know to ask the question, right? But a lot of
Right.
neurodivergent kids are so used to not knowing things they should know that they just think this is another one of those things. They're dumb, they don't know, which is just so hard. So I do, we do, you do is a really solid format for all the things that you're going to need to hand off to them.
All the
Yeah,
things.
all the things. All right.
I
And
like it.
practice
All right,
this
good one.
started early and get ready for rockiness in the we do zone. They don't want to work
Yeah.
together with you. So, like, how can you minimize damage, give them as much autonomy as possible, but as much scaffolding as they need, right? Holding that balance.
This is true.
Right.
I can do it. I'm fine. I can do it.
Yeah. So, yes. And then how do you make sure that that's true? So it gets,
Right.
it's not easy. I'm just saying, not at all. There's a messy middle to that. So be
Absolutely.
ready and
All right.
patient and all those things.
Patience. Yes.
All right, always. Okay, number two. And I love this one. This is my favorite framework, and it's like a whole bunch of things wrapped up into one. But in essence, the tagline is become a consultant rather than a manager for your child, right?
That one is really hard.
Oh my word. So I want to throw some really practical nuggets out there. So I'm going to do this versus this in these categories. Okay. So a manager has the illusion of power or control. Well, and it's a real manager, they really do. But when you're a parent, it's kind of an illusion that you have power and control if you're a college kid heading out to a state 3 states away from yours. Versus a consultant can have real influence, right? A manager, their line is, and their thoughts are, it's up to me. It's my call. I'm the parent. I paid 70 grand for you to go there. I'm the boss. I get it. It's a lot of money, a lot of risk. But then the consultant would say, it's up to you. It's your call. Like, if you can use that line with your student at any point where it's safe enough, but there's some risk for you as a parent, you're going to have some anxiety around it. But can you say that? Others are, I'm here with the answers. That's the manager role. And I'm available for questions.
Oh, I love that.
Laying back and letting that be the way it is. And even saying that, I'm available if you have any questions about this. You know they don't know. You know
Oh, I
you
know.
know.
Yep.
Be quiet.
Let them figure that out.
Yes. So this is what you should do, or any form of. I think you should, or you should, any should. And then what do you think you should be doing? What are your next steps? Do you have a plan? I love that line with my kid. Do you have a plan for the dishes tonight? Instead of do the dishes before you go to bed. Like, it's a world of difference. Worlds. And this is just my kid, but it's a big difference for me to say, what's your plan? Because I'm assuming you have one, even though they may not. But
They
the
may not.
assumption is a nice assumption for them to deal with versus your nagging, right?
I like that.
Lead with expectations and requests or demands. That's the manager role versus wait for an invitation from the client for involvement. Tough and maybe not. And sometimes it's not safe to wait. So I hear that. I love this one. The most used punctuation mark for a manager is what do you think?
Exclamation point.
Yeah. Or a period.
Or a period.
Right?
Yeah, done.
Most used punctuation mark for a consultant is a question mark.
Question mark.
Yeah, so try and get more of those in your sentence structures. Like, literally get down to the granular. Do you use more questions than exclamation points? Certainly. Non-negotiable, that's a manager. Negotiable, That's the consultant. And then this last one is so hard because I get it. Parent and anxiety around your student and they're far away and it's out of control. This is too important for any missteps. That's a manager. Allow space for mistakes and trust in a bigger process for the consultant role. Ooh, that's a hard
I have
one.
to tell you though, you would be really proud because I feel like I've been implementing these things, trying to with my own ADHD child who is 3 states away, who doesn't have a place to live yet for next year. And it's funny because my question often is, okay, so do you guys have a plan for next year yet? Like, have you looked at it? Like, what are you thinking? What's your plan? And I've been trying to leave it in his, obviously I have to leave it in his ball in his court because I'm 3 states away. I don't know what the options are there. So it's been nice because I can't do this for him. He has to do this. And there has been some anxiety, but I will say there is some peace on my end, knowing that this is not my issue to deal with, right? Like you're going to need a place to live. You're either going to live close to campus or you're going to end up 30 miles away and have to commute every day. That's the natural consequence. But I've been trying the whole, what's your plan? What have you talked to your roommates? What are they thinking? It's stressful though, especially when you are so far away.
Yeah, for sure. And what would happen if you swooped in? Because you could. Yeah. You could research pretty far. You could do the thing, but you are doing him no favor. He will not live his life in such a way where he's going to be homeless next year, right?
No, he will not be homeless. And that's what I keep thinking.
So it's going to be okay, right? So when can you have those decisions and moments of autonomy and independence where the own natural consequences will eventually light a fire under their rear to get going, right? And they don't need you with a lighter in hand doing it because the natural flow of the life will require it, right? So if there's stuff like that, give it to them, right? That's a really good one. Right? Now, getting meds before final exams, that would be more tricky, right? The pharmacy's out. They don't have Adderall. Well, now what? Then, so there's some spots certainly where it's we don't have room for mistakes with some things. So I just want to kind of have that caveat be present. But if it is something where life and health is not on the line immediately, you got space. Yeah.
But I think too, even with the medication, planning it out, having those conversations, what is your plan? I know it's, 2 months away or a month away, but you are going to want to make sure, do you have enough medication to get you through finals? And if not, what's your plan? Mm-hmm. And start kind of laying that groundwork earlier on. It does mean we have to be more, on top of things, but helping to get them to start thinking ahead too, because that's the other thing that we as ADHD people don't like to do is plan ahead. We are wait till the last minute kind of people. And so that planning ahead, because right now that seems like a really long ways away, but it's not. And this task requires some forethought. So I think it's still okay to put it in their court just a little sooner than later.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and to, natural consequences will happen where they will realize that their later was not soon enough. And then there's a remember last time, because they may not remember. Short-term memory and working memory and all these things can have a little bit of lacking happening. And so they literally may not remember what it felt like, what it looked like. So not in a nasty way, but remember this happened last time. And we called it 1 week ahead. How much further in advance do you think you want to do it? Can we throw that on the calendar, on your calendar? Can you throw it on the calendar? How do you want to remind yourself? I don't want to be having my conversations be with you about these kinds of what you might feel are naggy details, but I want to fully give it to you and know that it's in your hands in a way that's going to function.
Is it ever good at the time that the negative consequence, right? So they didn't get their medication on time. They just took their final without medication. Is that a good time to say, okay, can we talk about a plan for how to avoid this next semester and start sort of laying the groundwork then when it's fresh? Because sometimes, especially with that ADHD brain, a month later, they forgot the pain of not having their medication. It's not fresh.
Right. I think that's a really good question. I would say be careful of the shame zone. They're going to be living, breathing, feeling all the shame of flunking that final. And to talk to them then when we have rejection sensitivity stuff that's on board. RSD is real. If you don't know about that, look up RSD and ADHD and hold that and think about that prior to engaging in a moment where they know it's crystal clear they failed. And so give it some time, not a lot of time, right? And that I would say you'll know when they're out of their total shame spiral. They lift, right? And I think once you see that and it's neutral ground, you're not upset at your $2,000 that you blew because they flunked that college class you paid for. And they have calmed down and aren't sitting in their shame pit. Then there's your spot. But not months later.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah. So, anywho, okay.
Well, thanks. All right.
So that's manager versus consultant, and I'll share that with Laurie, so maybe she can share it out with you all, because I feel like it is. I will make sure that I acknowledge where the original source of many of those concepts are from is The Self-Driven Child by William Stixrud and Ned Johnson. So morphed some from that, but certainly the concept is originally. That's where I came across it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, and I love that book, by the way.
That's good to know.
Okay,
that's a good
pointer
one.
number 3. And this is the final one. These are just 3 super broad sweeping pointers. And I've talked about this already a little bit, but put this on a sticky note in many locations around you, but it's your call. Can you practice saying that with them? It's your call. And you can wrap limited choice around it, like kind of like the classic, we're going to leave the playground. Do you want to leave at 2 or 4? You could do various levels of that. They might catch on that you're really not giving them choice. It's limited choice. But, I think laying out options before them and brainstorming options with them. But the end of that conversation is, I'm here for questions. It's your call. This is your call. And I know that you will decide what's best for you. I believe you can do that. And I can't. I'm not living inside of you. So this is your call. Yeah. So I love that's it. It's your call. So,
how do you handle a student who's not ready to make that break, right? Who still isn't confident enough to make those decisions. And so when you say it's your call, it sends them into a stress, overwhelm.
Yes.
Like how, because clearly you're not going to college with them, right?
Nope.
They're going. Mm-hmm. So how do you manage those kids that aren't really ready yet?
Yeah, I think it's a super tricky spot because here's the 2 things that are happening simultaneously are they're not ready and they're doggedly trying to be. And they want to be an autonomous self that requires, that wants some status and respect in this world as an emerging adult human. And talking about not being ready with their parents is just going to be, it's a very tricky, nuanced, you got to be patient and really try and get in their skin conversation. And I would say in my relationships with my kids, if that were the case, I don't know that I would venture in myself very successfully, honestly. And so this is where it's really helpful. Do they have an adult mentor of some form in their life that they can brainstorm and play around it with? Because often you've had years of frustration as a parent, and your child, unfortunately, probably has gathered in their sweet, misconstrued mind that you're against them more than you're for them. Like they just really feel that. And I'm constantly surprised at very neutral comments I'll make to my daughter. And all of a sudden, I just told her that she's definitely going to fail this thing. And I'm like, oh, wow, I have no idea how we got from there to there. I guess I can kind of make up the path in my mind and figure it out. But, so I think counselors, coaches, an organic like auntie that they love, but like even saying to them, I feel like you and I, it's a very charged conversation, but I want you to have someone to just blast through options with. Here's 3 options I can think of. Here's this person, or this person. It's your call. You're going to have the conversation, not with me. I get it. Let's not do that
Right.
again. But who can it be, right? So that you have an objective source of adult wisdom to kind of play with you in this phase of life. Yeah.
Is that also a time to be thinking about the level of support that their school may be able to provide? All the schools are going to provide some level of support, some offer way more.
Yeah.
Is that a good time to really take into consideration what's available through the school, and is it going to be enough? Or
Sure.
if you think you have a child that may be needing a little bit more, to be looking at those as you're picking the school, because I do think that plays a big part in it too.
Right. Yeah. I think just a note to self, like, yes. And there's 2 schools you could be talking about right now, their high school setting or the college to be setting. Right. And it's funny, I didn't go there at all because my sweet things are in public schools with overwhelmed guidance counselors who are setting up SAT
Right.
tests and have so much on their plate that a very even 15-minute conversation brainstorming this out would be almost impossible, right? So it might be possible in some schools for sure, and yay for that school if that's a possibility. But certainly looking at the colleges that they would be heading to, there's an intermediate there, an in-between person, and that's IECs, Independent Education Consultants, and there's a group of them that actually specialize in neurodivergence. So it would be worth checking that out and going to literally IECA has a website and a list of college counselors that are the ones for the in-between decision part to help figure out, are they ready? Are they not? If they're not, then those category of college consultants are usually really familiar with all kinds of middle ground options, all kinds of amazing middle ground options. So that's a really great resource too.
Yeah, that's really important. That's a great resource. Thank you for sharing that. I think this is such a good conversation to have because I do feel like that transition from high school to college, parents feel like they're just throwing their kids to the wolves, sort of, and having these steps where you're sort of titrating the power and the control and handing it over slowly. I think it's good for both sides, right? It's good for the student to be slowly gaining that independence and for the parent to be kind of slowly releasing it and not feel like they're just, running away from the child and leaving them to fend for themselves. So,
Right. Right. And I can tell you the difference between a student that I've worked with who never had to make any of the phone calls and the student who does. And I have 2 of those students at very end of the extreme. One is the most beautiful advocate for themselves on the phone. They sound professional. They'll talk to anyone. They've got it. They get what they need and what they want in the college setting from anyone. And then the other one, I kid you not, would sit and kind of shake, entire body red, calling the mechanic for his car, and he'd put it off. The passenger seat was no longer staying put, and he was driving people around. So whenever he put on the brakes, the passenger seat would fly forward.
oh, nice.
We're talking dangerous stuff going on with this car that just kept building up. But he was deathly afraid of making the call. So we scaffolded it out, had a whole script, role played before. He got on, was super nervous, shaky, did it, and was so proud of himself.
Oh, I'm sure.
We had to have an experience like that to get him ready, right? So it's a very big difference. And they'll either get what they need in college because they know how to ask, and they're not believing of themselves. I'm the only one who has this need, therefore I shouldn't ask because I'm full of shame when I do so. But reframing that, oh my gosh, 4.0 students have needs. They're more confident at asking. They quote, know they're smart. And so once they don't know something, they think it's legit to ask. Whereas neurodivergence can sometimes come in already believing that they have a really dumb question to ask. So it's really brave for them to make those steps.
100%. That's awesome. Well, I obviously, as you know, and everybody knows, I'm a huge fan of coaching. So if you've got a student who's headed off to college and you're thinking about getting a coach, please reach out to Cindy. She is amazing at what she does, obviously, and I think coaching is that person, right? That can sort of be that intermediary between you and your student. If you have a student that struggles with some of this stuff or just needs some of those executive function supports as they transition to independence. So thank you for sharing these. Thanks for coming back and doing a few more minutes with us. We really appreciate it. I will post, make sure that your website's in the show notes, and then any of the handouts that you have, I'll include those as well. If you guys have any questions for me, listeners, or would like to suggest another topic or something you'd like to hear about, let's talk learningdisabilities@gmail.com. Our podcast website is ltldpodcast.com. Thanks for being here, and we will see you guys next episode. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today. In our show notes, you can find information about today's talk, as well as links to resources and other episodes. If you have questions about today's talk, have ideas for future episodes, or just want to stay connected, you can contact us through Diagnostic Learning Services on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So, let's keep talking learning disabilities. This podcast is sponsored by eDiagnostic Learning. You can find more information at www.ediagnosticlearning.com.